Hello, lovely learners. Welcome back to ALifeLearned. Today, I just wanted to share a little bit about a book I've been reading and how much it's been teaching me about myself. I guess in that sense, the book is The Body Keeps the Score by, oh God, I'm bad at pronouncing, Dr. van der Kolk. You can easily just Google, or rather look up in YouTube, those words, the body keeps the score, or the Dr. van der Kolk, or the condition I'm about to talk about, and you will find so much content, which is why I don't really want to get into it, because I'm not a fan of repeating content. I just more wanted to share my experiences and the fact that I'm going through this book. I've almost gotten about halfway, and boy, does it just validate and reverberate and resonate with me in so many ways. So a common misperception due to the DSM being the DSM, I guess, and just like refusing a lot of facts, data, research, information about childhood trauma and the impacts of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, on people's lives and health. Despite knowing since the DSM-3, like just before the release of the DSM-4, despite knowing and having all this information presented by researchers like Dr. van der Kolk about childhood trauma and childhood adverse experiences, they refuse to incorporate the condition called developmental trauma disorder into the DSM. And I mean, I think we can all agree that the DSM is a stupid piece of shit for a lot of reasons these days, but the sad reality is something getting into the DSM leads to, as this book explains, a lot more research going into it and a lot more studies, a lot more development and understanding about treatments for the condition. And so the DSM's dismissal that the condition developmental trauma disorder is a suggestive condition that came out of the intuition of professionals and has no foundation or proof is crap. Like Dr. van der Kolk himself and several other specialists presented decades of research that supported this diagnosis and this condition, and yet here we are, DSM-5 out. I don't know, maybe they're at 6 or 7 at this point. I'm not paying attention, to be honest, because I think it's all stupid. But you know, they keep releasing more further editions and not including this particular condition. And so it neglects the impacts of these experiences on people's developmental trauma disorder, and how it can lead to the development of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, how it overlaps with that condition so much, but how it's also very different. And so I just wanted to share that I've come to learn that I do believe I still did develop complex post-traumatic stress disorder out of the extreme abuse that I faced in my adolescence and early adulthood, but I believe I was like made really, really vulnerable is what would make most sense to developing that condition and even ending up in that position, that situation, rather, of, you know, being traumatized by that person for years and years and years, because I had already developed the developmental trauma disorder from my childhood traumas related to early molestation, and then as well as like attachment issues and trauma through that. And so for anyone who's ever felt like they can relate to me in any way or to my discussion of my symptoms related to trauma, I just highly recommend trying to find this book. I'm going to try and link below, although sometimes like various different filters will block stuff like this. It's a free website that you can download textbooks, and I haven't actually looked for The Body Keeps the Score, but you could probably find it because it's kind of old. It was released in 2014. I myself used a free Amazon card that I was given for something, I can't remember now, to buy it because I'd always been meaning to, and it's something that I was like, I think I'm going to want to reread this, you know what I mean? And I've come to find I really prefer to read physical stuff than digital stuff. We all have our preferences. But anyway, if you can only get it free digitally, why not, right? So the website is Libgen.is. I'll link it below again, and hopefully you can use that to find it. But otherwise, if you can rent it at your local library, that's totally worthwhile. Or you can also, maybe if you're a college or university student, you might be able to find it in your local library at your college or university. But either way, it's just a really impactful book. And even if you yourself haven't been through trauma, if there's anyone you've been really close to who's been through specifically early trauma in their early life or adverse experiences, or they seem to be someone who struggles with a lot of comorbid conditions, you know, not just depression and anxiety, but also a lot of harder to identify things, we'll just say, where it's like hard to pin them down and put a label on them, but they just struggle. There's a possibility that reading this book might give you some context, might give them some context. So one way or another, I just wanted to sort of put it out there. For anyone who's ever related, this is a new discovery sort of for me, this condition, because until reading this book, you know, I've always just kind of been going off of DSM crap and what I've been told from various various professionals that I've seen through group therapies and stuff like that. But in all of my private therapy, I never really had any specific ACEs or adverse childhood experience treatments apply to my experiences. So I've always still struggled. You know, there's a lot of unresolved stuff I'm still working on. But realizing this, I think, is huge for me, because it's really going to help me in looking for resources that will help me work through it. You know what I mean? Sort of thing. I've also recently, just as a side note, taken a workshop on grief writing, and turns out I really need to write about my trauma, like specifically the adolescent stuff that gave me the PTSD, C-PTSD, whatever, you know, with all of the courts and all that resulted. It's been affecting me. I do think it has a lot to do with the struggle I've been having with my professionalism and my placement and being terminated and all that jazz. Happened in a previous video. If you're curious, feel free to check out previous vlogs. But anyway, more point is, I think I'm going to finally get around to starting to write my autobiography. Fun. And I don't know how I'm going to go about publishing that, but I do want to make it available to people eventually. And the idea is basically just going to be like, I don't know how, but some kind of introductory that gives context to my childhood without going into it too much, and then really getting into my experiences in my adolescence, early adulthood, courts, and how that all was. So if you're ever interested in reading, if you're a person who likes to read and go through autobiographies in particular, that is something to look forward to in the future, I guess. Anyways, if you are someone who can relate and want to share at all in the comments or have any questions about the book, please do feel free to comment below. Otherwise, I just highly recommend looking it up on YouTube, because there's so much content, and I mean, you could just sit for hours and learn so much just watching it. Do recommend. And I'll link below again a couple sites, if I can, of places you can look to hopefully find the book for free, because in the end, we all benefit more if we can access information than cutting it off through pay-gates, yay capitalism. Anyways, please do comment as well as if you can relate to the experience of reading this book and just how like revolutionary it is to kind of discover yourself and discover what you've been through and how it's impacted you, and like have all these light bulbs go off and these things just relate. By all means, I'm all about relating. And otherwise, please do join me again next week or sometime soon, where I try again to share a little something I've learned or experienced in life.